Coming up in this video, we'll show you how to replace the wheel bearings on your motorcycle and show you what tools you need. Stay tuned. So to do this, you'll need the right tools and sockets for your bike and a workshop manual. You'll also need either a drift and a hammer to knock the old wheel bearings out, or a wheel bearing removal tool. This sometimes works better, sometimes they work better. Having both is usually handy. Also, you'll need something to press the bearings in. Now, a bearing and bush driver set is usually better for the job. Sorry about it being dirty, we've used it a lot over the last few days. Absolutely handy to use. You can press the races in, the bearings in, and you can press the seals in quite easily with this, very easy. If you've not got something like that, you can use a socket pressed on the outer race and knock it in with your hammer. But ideally, get the bearing driver set. And that's it. Firstly, you need to establish whether the wheel bearing actually needs replacing. So get the wheel elevated off the ground, grab it at the top and bottom and move side to side. Do that over 3 or 4 revolutions of the wheel, and if there's any play or movement, you know the bearings need replacing. So there's play in your bearings and they need replacing, which means you're going to have to remove the wheel. So the next thing to do is to slacken the caliper mounting bolts, the axle bolts and the pinch bolts. Next, you want to remove the brake caliper and support it. We prefer to use a bungee strap wrapped around the handlebars. The reason for supporting it is so the brake line isn't under pressure. Next, you want to remove the axle and take the wheel off. Take the spacers out and put them down on the sides they came off. Next, you want to get yourself a couple of wooden blocks. You want to rest the wheel on the blocks so the blocks are on either side of the brake disc. Therefore, the brake disc isn't resting on the floor and you're not damaging it. It also makes it easier to knock the wheel bearings out. You want to get yourself a large flat-bladed screwdriver or something similar. Put it under the seal and gently prise it out. It doesn't really matter if you damage the seals because ideally you need to replace them anyway. Now, a wheel typically has 2 bearings, one on the left and one on the right, and a spacer in the middle. You want to get yourself a drift and a hammer, put the drift through the wheel, gently trying to prise the spacer out the way so you've got a nice purchase on the wheel bearing. Hit it with an hammer and do that on the top and bottom so the bearing's evenly pressing out. You want to knock that bearing out, then the spacer will come out. You then want to turn the wheel round and knock the other bearing out. Once you've got the bearings out, you want to give the wheel a good thorough clean. When fitting the new bearings, some of them have a rubber seal on both sides, some of them have a seal on one side, and some don't have any seals. If they don't have any seals, you want to make sure you put plenty of lithium grease inside the bearings. If they're sealed on one side, you just want to put the grease on one side of the bearing, on the side that's not sealed, and that goes on the inside of the wheel with a sealed part on the outside of the wheel. If both sides are sealed, it doesn't matter which way it goes in. Just put a little bit of grease on either side of the bearing and press it in place. When pressing the bearing in, you want to make sure it goes in all the way in so it's fully home. You can tell when it's fully seated because it makes a different sound. Then turn the wheel round, put the spacer in, making sure it's nice and straight, and then press the other bearing in. Again, you want to make sure that's fully seated and both inner races turn freely. When the bearings are seated, just again apply a little bit of lithium grease to the outside of the bearing, and then you want to press some new seals in. I know here we're pressing old seals back in. It was an emergency job and we didn't have the seals in stock, but we had the bearings in. But always use new seals. Now you're ready to put the wheel back in. But before you do that, make sure the spacers, the axle and all the bolts are nice and clean. Apply copper grease on the threads and lithium grease on the axle. Don't forget to put your spacers in when you're fitting the wheel. Next you want to loosely fit everything and nip all the bolts up. Then go around everything with a torque wrench and torque them up to specifications. Once you've done that, don't forget to pump the brake, and then finally recheck the wheel bearing to make sure there's no play or movement at all. So that's how you replace the wheel bearing on your motorcycle. It doesn't always go as planned. In the past I've gone to knock them out, the inner race has come out and bearings have gone all over the floor and you're just left with the outer race still in the wheel. In that case you usually have to get a Dremel, cut a groove into it, then they'll knock out nicely. But luckily that went as planned. So now you've no excuse. Give it a whirl, and if you fail, you can always rely on a local motorcycle shop to sort it out for you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon.